I've talked a lot about the NFL playoffs already, which is kind of crazy because the matchups aren't even locked. But a lot of the best teams have already clinched the playoffs, and today I'll be discussing teams who I believe are actually legit and can live up to maybe being in the Super Bowl, or at least the teams I think have the best chance at being a true contender this season. But anyway, last video I discussed some of the weaker links of the playoffs, but now we'll be talking about what makes this one of the greatest playoff races we've ever seen. And the first team I want to discuss is actually probably the fan favorite, and it's going to be the Detroit Lions.
We're going to get up, and on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off.
And look, guys, if I'm being honest about this Lions team, my only real concern is just their injuries. They've been an elite team all season, but injuries have really taken quite a few starters out of their lineup. Even with some of these injuries, though, they've been winning games still. This is one of the reasons they're still a legit team in my eyes, and they also lead the league in points per game, and defensively, they allow the sixth least amount of points per game with 19.9. And the defensive starters is really where they've seen injuries, but I wouldn't expect that number to skyrocket a bunch. In total point differential, though, they sit at 194, which is the most in the league by 56 points, and that is genuinely insane. The Lions have also beat good teams, but this insane point differential mostly comes from them destroying the Titans in that game way back. If I'm being honest, guys, I don't think many teams can stop the Lions. Obviously, they've had losses this season. They lost a game to the Bills, for say, but this team, I really think that they're the real deal. But that's how I feel, and I think that there's three true contenders in this postseason. I'll talk about five teams today, but I'll make sure you guys know which ones those are of the three, and the Lions are definitely one of them.
Oh my God! You're on fire, dude!
Honestly, another team that the fans seem to love. The Bills have surprisingly made their way into this talk to some. They're one of my favorite teams in the AFC because they're clicking as a unit. They've been able to run the ball and pass mainly because Josh Allen is playing at an MVP level, even with minimal weapons. And with that said, though, my main concern for them really is a lack of star power. Obviously, they have Josh Allen, who is playing at an MVP level, like I've already said. And although we see the Chiefs win without elite weapons, I think Andy Reid is a bit of a better coach than Sean McDermott. The Bills this season, though, haven't had many sloppy wins. Obviously, this Patriots game they did, but they found a way to take down the Chiefs in the regular season, and that's something that no other team has done yet. And they would really like to repeat that in the postseason if they have to play them. I actually really do like the Bills' chances to come out of the AFC. I think that this Bills defense at some times has been a little bit concerning, but at the same time, when it comes to most of the better teams, they keep them in check and they actually give the offense a shot. And when it comes to those, more so fringe teams in the playoffs, normally the Bills defense can keep them in check some, kind of like the Texans or the Colts, but they might need to step up this postseason especially. And when it comes to point differential, the Bills are actually the second, right? So something that I really do like to look at is point differential for these contending teams. If they're not in that like top seven or so, I just don't really think that they're going to be able to spread out the games too much and be able to get leads on these other teams. At least that's a stat that I look at. I don't know about you guys, but I think that point differential throughout the season does matter.
Well, I was actually coming out here to pick up a cupcake and then go back home.
In my opinion, I think the Eagles may have the best shot at making it all the way through. Although Hurts is out as of now, as long as his concussion is nothing major, he should be able to return in time for the wild card. Ideally, though, the Eagles will be able to get Hurts back in Week 18, so they won't have to worry about any sort of rust during wild card weekend. But it's also important just not to rush him back. And honestly, I'm not sure. I don't remember if the Commanders' win last night still put some intention in you know, they can still win the NFC East. I think the Eagles win clinched it for them, especially seeing the win total on the screen now. So there's a good chance they're just going to let him sit in week 18. But the Eagles' main X factor isn't even Hurts. It's more so the combination of him and Saquon, in my opinion. I think Hurts and Saquon is what many people thought Lamar and Henry would be. As many of us know, Saquon is currently chasing the rushing record, and he's only a little more than 100 yards away now. And I'm not sure if he'll get it just because he might actually end up sitting in their final, which would be kind of fair considering Dickerson was playing less games when he hit that record. But at the same time, it's an evolving league, right? Obviously, running is less prominent now, so the extra game is probably what backs are going to need to be able to break these records. But when it comes to point differential, I know I was just talking about how much I do consider a point differential. My top three contenders do actually are all top three in point differential, but I didn't do it just solely off of this stat. I did it because of the other reasons I've given. But the Eagles are third behind the Lions and Bills with a 153. And the two other teams I'll be mentioning in this video don't go off of this. So let's get on to those teams. And look, guys, I think there's many teams that can be legit contenders this year. And I would honestly add the Vikings to the list. About 3 weeks ago, though, I said they're not one of the top three contenders of the NFC. But if I'm going to be honest, guys, I'll have to take that back. They've stayed hot, and I was a Darnold believer, but I didn't really believe him to be a quarterback that take them far in the playoffs. But I do think he can go out there and win them some playoff games, if I'm being honest. Now the Vikings sit fifth in point differential, so finally I've broken that 1, 2, 3 there. But the next team I'll talk about, I'm not going to go over any more NFC teams because I think already talking about three, you can't sit here and talk about so many teams being contenders. And so these next tier of teams will be in my sleepers video. You guys can go ahead and subscribe, watch out for that one. The Ravens over in the AFC are finishing with the second best back in the league in Derrick Henry. Lamar and Henry have both had great seasons, and of course Lamar is having another MVP season. But if I'm being honest, though, I think this team just has flop game randomly, and I honestly just wouldn't be surprised if they had one against a good team in the playoffs. With that being said, they're still a good team, and I just wouldn't be surprised if they don't make it to the championship round this season. Honestly, though, I wouldn't be surprised if they did either. I don't expect this Ravens teams to be a Super Bowl squad, though. And like I said about the flop games, I think what people forget is a good loss still isn't as good as an ugly win. I heard someone say that recently. They were talking about, the Bills and Patriots game. It might have been football analyst. I like to watch him a lot on YouTube, but you win a pretty game. Obviously, that's what you're really striving for. But an ugly win is still fine, right? But pretty losses really don't get you far, like that loss to the Chiefs that the Ravens had. Now, they did have a pretty win against the Bills. There are some issues there that game with the Bills, though. But the Ravens just aren't my Super Bowl team coming out of the AFC. I'd honestly have to give it to the Bills or even the Chiefs, honestly. But as I talked about earlier, Baltimore's actually fourth in the league in point differential there. Now, look, guys, in my opinion, the Chiefs are a good team. Now, this part I don't have any notes written for. I do know they're top five in point differential, like I've talked about so much. They might be top seven. I might have forgot. But let me just be honest. They have Mahomes, they have Andy Reid, and Mahomes' down season is mostly a factor of just he's not working with a lot. He decided to blow out his number one target's knee. I still don't know what he's doing on that play. But once again, I think the Chiefs are still a good team and do still have a chance of contending. Their defense has been great this season, and like I talked about some going over the Ravens, an ugly win is better than a pretty loss, and that's what this team's surviving on. Now you can only get so far on ugly wins, but you know at the same time, I think that's why this isn't my favorite team to come out of the AFC. I honestly do like the Bills because you can only get so far on ugly wins, and I think that eventually this team will drop a game. Thank you all for watching. I hope to see you again. Have a great one.